One of the reasons we do Saving America is to help our society by publicizing important people and books. This episode is no exception. Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein, and we welcome for our first appearance of David Baumblatt, who was born and raised in New York by his Jewish father and German mother. After West Point, he served his country both in the Army and the FBI, where he worked in the National Security Branch assigned to foreign counterintelligence. Convinced of an impending collapse of American society due to the increasing negative influence and corrupt collusion of globalist U.S. corporations and globalist U.S. government, David left America in 2010 and moved to China, where he has worked in risk management, advising clients on strategic threat intelligence, as well as conducting security operations, corporate investigations, and due diligence. He has also worked for both Amazon and Boeing, leading their corporate crisis management departments, overseeing all of Asia. He is the founder and CEO of Terenbith Leadership Advisory. Rather incredible, this man has been declared an enemy of the state and is no longer welcome back in the United States. His political ideology centers upon faith, family, and freedom. He is fluent in Mandarin, Chinese, and German. His motto is "Lead to Victory." He is the author of the current book, Patriots Betrayed, a soldier, scholar, and spy's warning about America. And so we welcome author Baumblatt for his first appearance on Saving America. Welcome.
Thanks, David. I appreciate the welcome, and hello to all your listeners.
Yes, and boy, you've got, that's, I think, maybe the longest introduction that we've put into the record so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Put a lot into it. As you know, what we do is we ask 3 questions to give people a chance to give a quick view of what they're involved in. And again, I know what you're involved in is much more complex, but here's question number 1. Tell us why you are not welcome back in the USA with regard to the FBI investigation against you.
Sure. Thank you. So first, I do not know why I'm not welcome back, but I could tell you why, with the experiences that I go through. When I go to America, I am detained, searched, interrogated, deceived, humiliated, and physically assaulted by my own government. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go through it really quick. The last time I traveled back to America was August of 2019. It was a plane from Taiwan to Chicago International O'Hare Airport. As soon as I arrived in O'Hare, I was selected for secondary screening. I began to undergo interrogation by what's called Customs and Border Patrol. They wanted to know all about what am I doing in China, what are my contacts. I tried to record the presence with my personal mobile phone. They told me I'm not allowed to do it. I had to surrender all my digital equipment to the Customs Border Patrol, give them my password to unlock the devices. My devices then went into a back room that I was not allowed to accompany them. Then they proceeded to continue to interrogate me, go through all my baggage, piece by piece. I waited over 3 hours until I finally got my digital equipment back. I left the airport thinking that was going to be it. It's not. Once I was in Chicago, and to all my viewers, my reason I was in Chicago is I was about to do a deposition against the Boeing company that I was suing them. I'm on Rumble channel, episode number 2, me and Boeing, check it out. You'll understand what I'm talking about, the collapse of America. But the purpose of the trip to Chicago was to do a deposition against the Boeing company. While I was in Chicago, within about 24 hours, I realized I was under surveillance. Not overt surveillance, but covert surveillance. I could just feel it. I ended up going to what's called Grant Park, which is in the city of Chicago. At that time, I saw an individual that was surveilling me, which is a polite word to say he was stalking me, taking pictures of me, all covertly. I described this to the audience. Everything that I'm saying here has been submitted to the congressmen and senators. This is all documented. Once I realized I was under surveillance, I ran away from that vicinity about 200 meters inside the park into a dead end. I turned around. The same man is in a full pursuit running after me. Again, I go into the details and more. I won't go in too much now because we're under time. The man ended up, There was a physical altercation where the man physically assaulted me. At that time, I had no doubts in my mind this person was an FBI employee, either an FBI special agent or in the FBI, what we have is surveillance operatives. He was one or the other. And I knew at that time, if I would have physically assaulted this person, I would have been in a lot of trouble. I ended up becoming physically assaulted by this person. I ended up running again away from this person, escaping the maneuver. I never imagined I would be doing this in my own country. Again, to the audience, this is why I'm not welcome. To make a long story short, when it was time for me to leave America, same airport, Chicago O'Hare, I check in, I go through customs, I'm ready to board the plane just like all the other passengers are. As we're lined up to literally board the plane, 2 customs and border agents in full uniform are inspecting all the passports of the people boarding. They see my passport. They tell me to step out of line about 2 to 3 feet. This is the humiliation. All the passengers are seeing what's going on. They end up saying they need to go through all my stuff. I said, where should I put my stuff? They said, just sit on the floor. I'm sitting on the floor, taking off my shoes. They want to go through the soles of my feet, all my baggage, everything, taking pictures of all the telephone numbers or whatnot, all in plain sight of all the passengers. It got so bad that the stewardess who's waiting at the open door of the airplane is motioning to him that, is he going to be arrested? Otherwise, this plane has got to go. The plane's ready to go. They're still searching me. Finally, again, interrogation. To make a long story short, I'm finally allowed to leave. Immediately, the stewardess escorts me to my seat and we're gone. I'm detained, searched, interrogated, deceived, humiliated, physically assaulted. If that's not welcome, I don't know what it is. I get treated better in foreign countries than my own country. And to all the audience, all our senators and congressmen know about this story, and they've all ignored me. I'd like answers, and I'm sure the American public would like answers.
Well, maybe this interview today, which may be played to a different audience, maybe that'll trigger some of that. Let me ask you question number 2. Describe what you're seeing with regard to the decline of America and its symptoms and causes.
Absolutely. I knew in 2005, America is headed to civil war and collapse. In 2010, I left America. Actions speak louder than words. When you physically leave the country, you know it, you believe it. If I could say one thing to show people what is the litmus test to show why we're declining, I come from a military family that goes all the way back to the Civil War. I have all family members, World War I, World War II. I'm a West Point grad. I grew up with father figures who served in the Vietnam. And if we all remember, in Vietnam, there was something called the draft. So to answer that question very specifically, I want my viewers to answer this question or think about in their mind. If there was a war now in America and we had to do the draft, do you think Americans would raise their hand and volunteer? Me as a military veteran, I would not even consider it enlisting in the military now. And to any of the young Americans, when I was a young boy, if you dodged the draft during Vietnam, I called you a coward. Now, if a draft came and a young American said, hell no, I'm not going to go, I'd say that person's a smart person and his morality's fine. Because when the government has no loyalty to the citizens have no loyalty to the government. So I would just pose that question to the American citizens when they think how strong our country are we, what is the decline? You ask yourselves, if we had a war and we needed to do the draft compared to Vietnam, World War I, World War II, Korea, what did you think is going to happen to the Americans now? Would they raise their hand and say, I will die for this country? Or would they say, hell no, screw you? I think we are going to be in a world of hurt in America.
Wow, something else. Question number 3, what can the average American do about the circumstances you're observing? What is the action plan?
Sure. So I left America and I'm not, even though it is rising, if you do the studies, you're seeing more and more Americans leave America. I'm not advocating that. But what I will say is strength is in numbers. I would say find yourself with like-minded people. We've all heard this. Christian flight, white flight, conservative flight, whatever you want to call it. People are leaving blue states. They're going to red states. I would say surround yourself with like-minded people. We all know it. When I was young growing up, if you were a Democrat, I was a Republican, we were in a bar restaurant, We'd argue a little bit, and that's it. We've never seen the amount of political tensions that were going on now. We are going to civil war. I would say number one is start reevaluating who is your groups, who are the teams, who is your family, who are the associations that you're belonging to. Start finding like-minded people, even if that means you leave your state or your city and go to another place. I'm not saying you're going to have to leave the country, but I'm saying if it's going to get to civil war or collapse, you want to be surrounded by like-minded people.
Well, I'll say this is a pretty tough situation. I can relate to it. I was actually subject to the draft during the Vietnam War, and I fell into an interesting category because I was in the lottery. And I got a very high lottery number. And actually, while in college, instead of having a 2S deferment, I had a 1Y classification, meant that I was 1A, except they hadn't done a physical on me. It was subject to being drafted. But when I got the notice from the draft board, I call up, my hands are shaking, and I said, what's going on here? I'm about to get drafted. And the lady on the other end of the line at the Philadelphia Draft Board said, "Hey, Mr. Schein," she said, "your draft number is 232. You have zero chance of being drafted," because the lowest number was 75 that would be drafted out of Philadelphia. Part of the reason for that is because there were so many volunteers at that time out of a big city like Philadelphia. But it was a pretty interesting situation. And of course, I actually served all of my Y exposure, and then was subject to the they told me once you served all that out, you're only subject to draft if you're under 35 and we go to a world war. And of course, by 1975, Nixon had eliminated the draft. But as you know, I came from a military family myself. My dad did 28 and a half years in the Navy, and so I was military dependent during Vietnam. And it was very interesting to be on one of these far liberal WAC campuses as someone who came from a military family. So it's interesting, your observations. And of course, you reached a higher level by both being at West Point, which is a big deal in itself, and then serving in both the Army and the FBI. How can our audience get more information about you and your book?
Sure. Well, one thing I could tell the audience is, sorry about Freedoms in America. I've already been shadow banned on YouTube, so not there. So I would say the two social platforms are Twitter and Rumble. All you got to do is look up my name, David Baumblatt. You'll find me. And then my website, it's called terebinth.info. You could get the book there, audio, ebook. And then there's hard and soft cover books, Amazon and whatnot. But the website, Terebinth, and then Twitter and Rumble, just my name, and you'll find me.
Well, thank you so much, David Baumblatt, for being with us today on this special edition of Saving America. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thank you all for joining us for this special episode, and obviously a very important one. Please subscribe on your favorite platform.
Thank you, David. Lead to victory.